All right, so let's wait a few seconds. Facebook, for some reason, tends to cut the beginning. So that's the way it is. We have to give it a few seconds. Hey, guys, I'm here with Carson Vihedi. How are you, Carson?
Matt, wonderful as always. How are you, sir?
Excellent. So it's been a few calls that we've been doing together, and I think it's very valuable. Every time that we've been doing these, I think we've created some good content, so I'm definitely glad to be doing it again today.
I totally concur. I always look forward to our chats, and I think we're both very passionate about the topic, so it's fun to talk about them.
Absolutely. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to introduce you to people that will be watching this and then ask you questions. And of course, this is a AMA, so ask me anything. So if you guys have any questions for Carson, comment below this video. I'm going to see them here. I'm going to ask those questions to Carson. So Carson is a published author of 2 books, a very successful sales leader and a top performer with a track record of consistently exceeding goals in leading departments, as well as individual performance. He is recognized for leading a 50 million annual call center operation and was #1 out of 120 sales managers company-wide. He grew the department's revenue by 413% over the 4 years that he was there. He's currently a territory manager for Microsoft and handling partner relationships with corporate accounts with responsibility of driving revenue growth and customer satisfaction, building relationships, and growing new business. So again, welcome to the B2B Sales Geniuses series.
Stoked to be here as always, Matt.
Awesome. So I have a few questions here. The first one I had was, are you doing both inbound and outbound lead generation for Microsoft on one end and your books on the other end?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key pieces to lead generation is to, look at the different mediums that are open to you, and really optimization of the different processes and platforms that could be there. So, I'll speak briefly about my own work. So obviously, I've been writing and blogging and doing different things around sales and leadership for several years. So there's not really anything that is as an inbound from that vantage point, but because a lot of that is strictly outbound. But one thing that helps create a lot of those conversations is utilization of social media. And it's funny because I've had the benefit of talking to folks that have written a lot of sales books, like Jeffrey Gitomer and Jeb Blunt. And I think one of the things that really resonated with my conversations with them was just that to sell books, I mean, you've got to have a lot of different conversations. There's not really any silver bullets when it comes to marketing those types of things, but by strategically placing yourself out there and writing good content and continuing to have these types of conversations and really figuring out what works, sharing video, sharing content. I mean, same things that you're doing, Matt. I think a lot of those types of things can create opportunities whereby people will reach out to you and you can have continued conversations. I've been tinkering with that process for several years. From a Microsoft standpoint, obviously anytime you work for a company, I think the company, there's going to be situations where you get leads from your company. You're going to have, maybe current and past customers that you can kind of mine from. There may be referrals and things like that are set up. But then there's also going to be ways that you can attend events, and maybe there's a chamber of commerce, or there's different meetup groups that you can join. Maybe there's leads that come from social media, or there could be websites that you can go out to where you can actually find companies in the size and territory that you sell into. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get inbound leads there, but also do outbound and outreach while you're prospecting. So I think there's a variety of ways that you can do that. Yes, that's absolutely something that I've been doing for several years, both currently and then also in previous roles that I've had. I think there's a lot of benefit to it. And again, I think that, and I'll sum up by saying, there's always question of, kind of what's the most value. And I think there's a lot of folks that are in sales that try to really only gravitate towards the things that they think have the most propensity to get leads out of. But I'll tell you, don't discriminate against any potential lead sources because you never know where those wells will hit and where those potential new referral wells can become. Because again, at the end of the day, you got to realize word of mouth and referrals are really the top source of getting these leads, and you never know where that's really going to come from. So really mine your existing network, and obviously optimize the leads that you're utilizing. We've had some previous conversations too around service with your clients, and I think at the end of the day that can really lead to a lot more referrals as well. So yep, I'm a big proponent of utilizing every mechanism possible to generate leads.
Okay. Your cell phone is being picked up when you're receiving texts or emails. If you don't mind just putting it on mute for the duration of the call, I think it's going to be a better user experience. Yeah, since you're going through your cell phone, then it makes sense that we're hearing it vibrate.
Got it.
Take your time. Okay. So what have you been focusing on the most? I mean, you've mentioned several different methods of getting new leads. So what has been, let's say, your 3 elements of focus?
The elements of focus as far as actually getting leads, I think the key piece is really look at, number one, your industry. Who are your target customers? Where are they located geographically? What industries are they in? What do your competitors do to market? And, who is currently picking your competition? Because at the end of the day, really, you're trying to place yourself in front of your competitors so that your potential lead source sees you. And, what are the differentiating factors that set you apart? So think about what your competition strategy would be to pick up leads, and be sure that you're one step ahead and you're differentiating yourself. So in essence, you're metaphorically placing a billboard between your potential customers and the competition. I think a lot of times that can kind of help you start to formulate a different potential lead source. The other piece too is consider a lot of times the mediums that are open to you. We just talked about this. Do you get leads from your company? Are there current and past customers that you can look to either for new potential lead sources? Are there other stakeholders at the companies that you work with that you need to discuss your products and solutions with? Are there new things that that from a value add perspective that you are offering or your company's offering? So look at some of those types of things. Also, a lot of times it's great to, and we've talked about this on a separate conversation, is really building that social selling presence, because it's a great way to stay top of mind with clients rather than always having to be reaching out to them and forcing the conversation. With social selling, you can stay top of mind, or with email marketing, you can stay top of mind without always having to reach out for follow-up and checking in and checking status and things like that. The other piece too, are there different customers that you work with or different partners that you work with where you don't necessarily, as it were, cross the streams, where you can add value for them without directly competing on a product or service. That's always a great way to build a referral base as well, because if there's ways that you can bring them value, bring them clients, a lot of times you can set up where you've got another referral well, so they'll think about you whenever something pops up that they don't do or don't want to do, and may fall in your wheelhouse. So think about the mediums that are open to you, and I think that's a wide array, because a lot of times there's different events that may transpire in your network, in your region from a networking perspective. You may have meetups, and again, you're talking about social media. I mean, just on like a LinkedIn alone, I mean, you've got the capability of geo-targeting customers in any industry that you want. You can see their title, you can reach out to them. There's websites like Hoovers and others that are going to allow you to find companies in the same size and territory that you sell into. So with these resources available to you, and then the different networking events and groups that are in your area, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of target who you want to go after. And then I'd say finally with that is, find different ways to lead with value, but realize that you're selling an appointment out of the chute. You're not really selling the whole kit and caboodle just yet. Your goal is to get in front of them so you can do needs analysis and really make a personalized recommendation in a relationship. So, I think those are kind of the key fundamentals when it comes to lead generation.
Great. We actually have a question from Jacob. I'm going to show it on the screen here. Do you think that the sales representative should focus on marketing to those potential lead generation sources, or specifically have a marketer to focus on creating the brand awareness to gain those leads? That's
a fantastic question, Jacob. So, I believe in the first part of your question. So do I think the sales reps should focus on marketing to potential lead generation sources? I don't think it hurts. I think there's some definite benefits to that, especially too when you have a relationship. I can speak for myself, my vantage point, as an all-up Microsoft territory manager, I have a lot of really good relationships with clients. So if they're hearing it from me rather than from maybe necessarily another person in the business, or maybe it's another person within my organization with whom they don't have a relationship. I find that sometimes even when they hear from other folks in the business, they reach out to me anyway and ask me about it. So I do see a definite benefit in doing some of that outreach myself and doing some of that marketing. Because again, let's hark back to the previous thread in the conversation. It enables you to stay top of mind with your client. So if there's ways that you can do like newsletters, or if there's ways that you can build a list, gaining permission to send a newsletter to them, or following them on social media and engaging them on like a LinkedIn where they can see your posts and things like that. There are a lot of really good ways to market directly to them. So yes, I think that there is definite value there. However, there are a lot of sales tasks that are your responsibility as a sales rep, that if you're doing a lot of marketing, it's gonna take away from your day to day. And keep in mind, I mean, your primary job is to manage that book of business and manage those relationships and make sure that those relationships that you're adding value to the relationship. So I think that if you have a marketer, it's fantastic. I think it's important that you work in tandem where they understand your priorities and how they can best add value for you, and vice versa, because again, your role is to add value. You want to also add value within your organization. You want to be sharing with your marketer what is relevant, and so I think it's important that if you do have a marketer, which is a great resource, figure out how you can work in tandem and how you can bring value to their role and to their job. But at the same time, yes, if you can do marketing and carve off some of your time to do that, it is valuable. I think it's important to work smart, not necessarily harder. Because, again, your time is very valuable. So you want to find ways where you can do things that are going to be very highly impactful. That's why I like newsletters, things that are high touch, things where you can get in front of clients necessarily very quickly, like a newsletter where you don't have to necessarily have a conversation and put a pause in your day, but maybe you can reach out to 100, 200, 500 people all at the same time. I've had newsletter lists in the past which had thousands of people on them. So I think it was very valuable to market to them because it was great to kickstart conversations. Because remember, at any point in the sales process, you're just trying to get to the next phase. And when you're marketing things, you're just trying to get to the conversation phase. You're trying to sell a conversation. So yes, I like as a sales rep selling the conversation because then I can get in front of them, but I can stay top of mind with them as well.
Okay. Sorry. Are you using any tools to sort of manage the flow of leads and their evolution through your sales funnel? So maybe a CRM system or something else?
So yeah, I work for a company that sells that. So yes, I do now, and I have in the past used different systems to manage that, and I think that's important. There's a lot of different tools that are out there. I always have to be careful when I talk about my own company stuff and that versus competition, because I don't want to show any type of favoritism. But no matter what it is, whether you're using a spreadsheet or you're using a different mechanism within your email, or you're using a different mechanism within a CRM type system, it's vital, because remember, you're managing these individual opportunities and relationships. And the more you have, the more imperative it is that you have some kind of tool by which to do that.
Okay. Jacob says, thank you. Good stuff.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Jacob.
Okay. How do you prioritize leads? You have a bunch of leads coming in. How do you go about deciding which ones you should, manage first or deal with first?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we all face that. I mean, I liken it to my current role also versus a role that I had several years ago where, I had numerous lead sources, and it's a good problem to have, right? To have number of lead sources, but also obviously doing your own outreach. You're always going to, sales is all about probability. That's it. Probability and furthering the cause and going down that path of, getting closer and closer to the close, and furthering the relationship. So, I think you're prioritizing your lead based on propensity and, propensity to buy. Maybe it's ROI for your business, viability of converting that sale. So I think there's a variety of things that go into it. But as time goes by, you're going to, and hopefully your business has a way of tracking and monetizing the leads that you're getting, because it's great to be able to look at, okay, well, I've got lead source A that has X percentage of a close rate. I've got lead type B that has a lower percentage of a close rate. So, I want to obviously focus on all of my leads, but if I'm going to pounce on a certain type of lead first, it's going to be the one with the highest propensity to buy. And that's why I think we're all students, right? We're all students of the selling game, because ultimately you're studying, what types of leads have a high propensity to buy. In my current role, I have a lot of different types of leads that can come in from various sources, and it's important for me to figure out, okay, how do I want to prioritize these? How do I want to manage them? Who do I want to give them to? And I think if I were to look at my entire sales career as a body of work, I think the key piece from a lead prioritization standpoint has always been to look at, okay, what are the ones that I can very quickly move to the next step of the sales process, and how can I get as many in play as I possibly can? We say it all the time. It's almost it is a cliche in the sales game. We are playing a numbers game. So you want to get as many of these balls in the air as possible, but you also have to make sure that you're effective with it. And you don't want to invest a ton of time and resources, whether personal resources or your company's resources, in leads that have a very, very low propensity to buy. On the flip side, if they have a high propensity to buy, we and or a potential high output of payout. I think that there's a lot of reps that are what we call whale hunters, and then there's a lot of reps that are that will sell anything and everything, no matter how small the deal is. And frankly, I think there's room for both. The best is a happy medium, but you prioritize leads based on the highest propensity to buy, and also the highest propensity of payout, and conceivably a happy medium in both of those. But again, I will tell you, don't discriminate against any potential lead sources. I think it's important to put all of the balls in play, but be very selective about where you're investing your time and your resources, because you've got to figure out what are the deals that are going to get me to goal and beyond.
Okay, so you're talking about being smart and where you're investing your time. So what does your routine look like, let's say on a daily basis or a weekly basis, where you're generating some new leads, but also managing those leads through your CRM or prioritizing these leads? What does your routine look like?
That's a great question. And honestly, that's always evolving. There have been times, let's face it, there's any number of things and fires that can pop up, and any number of things that can pull you away from your process. It's paramount that you have a process, and it's also paramount that you're able to pivot on that process and evolve. So on a daily basis, I'm up and I'm out loading, and we talked about this in our last conversation about social selling, loading what that social media is going to look like for the day. There's a lot of tools that are out there where you can load your messages and your tweets and your posts for the entire day. So that sets up one well of potential leads. But I think one thing that is very important that really needs to guide your day is look at those leads, look at your pipeline or whatever it is, and however you track that, and think about how can I impact each one of these deals today. Can I impact them? Is there anything that I can do to impact them today? And then make those steps, whether it's, I need to reach out to this stakeholder at this company, and just see where we are in the process. And again, too, part of that process is really fine-tuning the wording and the verbiage that you're using, because, you can read a lot of different articles about People that just say, well, it's the old tried and true, well, I'm just following up or I'm just checking in. I like to say, hey, I just want to make sure I'm operating on your timetable. You indicated when we talked last that this was a need, and I want to make sure I'm operating on your timetable. How can I add value? What conversation do we need to be having right now? Or just pick up the phone. I think that's one lost art in today's selling world. We are becoming so virtual and so mobile that we're doing a lot of these, we're doing a lot of emails and we're doing a lot of messaging, but we're not just picking up the phone and going straight to the source. So, I think really the overarching strategy that I try to employ on a daily basis is what can I do to impact every single one of these deals today, but also make sure that you are making time and actually, you know what, too? Throw time on your own calendar to do the things that you need to do, like prospecting. It's easy to get caught up in all this other stuff that's going on, but if it's pulling you out of your process isn't going to work because you don't have time to work it. So be sure that you're still setting aside time to plant seeds because if you're not going to have new pipeline. So be sure you set aside that time to prospect. Be sure you set aside that time to follow up on some of these items. But again, I think my overarching strategy is I look at my stuff every day, and my number one priority is how can I move all of these deals closer to the goal line today? And I think if you employ that strategy, they will get closer. Because remember, it's all about process and it's all about people. You're focusing on these people and figuring out ways that you can interact better and formulate better relationships. But at the same time, you're really staying true to a process that will get these deals closer to completion.
So in a virtual world like we live in today, do you recommend doing video calls in that case? You were talking about doing phone calls, because we're all so virtual and we message on LinkedIn and email. Do you tend to go towards video, or you just pick up the phone and do a phone call?
It depends. I mean, I think that it really depends on your client. You want to mimic your client. When I started in sales, I was always going out in a suit and tie, and I was always, picking up the phone and smiling and dialing. And I think as time has gone by, absolutely, there are times where I'm on a video conference and, maybe I do or don't share my screen depending on what the client is doing. I mean, if they want to share their screen with me, I'm going to do the same with them, unless I just got back from the gym and I'm disheveled. But the other piece to that too is that I think it's almost, we've gotten away from just getting on the phone and calling folks. We've set up so many of these conference calls, and anybody who's in sales nowadays knows that you've got to differentiate yourself, but you've also got to mirror the client. So whatever they want is ultimately what you want to deliver, but you also want to not be status quo. So, I'll go to client meetings with my teams today, and if I know that they wear jeans and a nice shirt, that's what I'll wear. If I know that I need a suit, I'll do that too. But if I'm on a video conference and they're sharing their screen, I will as well. And a lot of times I'll do that anyway, just because, again, anything that you can do to continue that relationship, further that relationship, make it personal, that's going to take it to the next level. We hit this on the last conversation too, Matt. Social selling has done a tremendous job of brokering conversations and starting new relationships that never would have existed otherwise. So I think it's paramount in lead generation, but that's what it does. It sets the table where we can go in and have a personal conversation. Nothing will ever replace the face-to-face. So obviously prioritize. Face-to-face is first and foremost. If you've got to settle for something, phone calls good, conference calls are good, but ultimately you want to have a personal relationship that has culminated in a face-to-face.
Yeah, so you still recommend going and meeting the person face-to-face no matter what to close a deal?
Yeah, if you have the time to do it, you definitely want to make as many of your meetings with them in person. Now, sometimes that's not feasible, and obviously we sell a lot of times into different geographies. I've had divisions of teams that I've managed that have been all over the country, that have I've sold stuff all over the world. So sometimes that's not viable. But again, there's always one step closer, and doing a video conference and doing things like this, I think it's still very personal because you can dive into their mannerisms, and people just seem a lot more human than something something that's automated. That's one thing that really helps differentiate, because think about, again, what your competition does. Also think about what people that have tried to sell to you have done. You get a lot of automated things and just random messages, and a lot of it happens on social media all the time, where folks will reach out and it's not personal. But once you have a conversation, whether it's in person or if you have to do it via call or like a video chat, it makes it a lot more personal.
Okay. What is your sales funnel looking? I'll do that again. What does your sales funnel look like?
Like today, my personal sales funnel, mine is gold. Are you kidding me? I take a lot of pride in a funnel, and I also think that there's a lot of honesty in a funnel. It's important to make sure we're honest in how we call our deals, as it were. So, I mean, my personal sales funnel is a good conglomeration of different conversations that I've had, and just with notes around viability of the deal. One thing that I do well is I can type very quickly, so I take a lot of notes, and I also like to do necessary follow-ups while I'm sitting right there in the meeting. So I may be reaching out to different folks and tying up loose ends while I'm sitting there, because let's call it what it is. The longer time span that goes between the meeting that you're having with that client and the next step, the momentum and the passion dissipate. And so I think it's important to do a lot of those types of things while you're sitting right there in the meeting. And I think that improves the funnel, because there's no better time to find an opportunity than when you're sitting right there. And the other piece to that, too, is that you may go in with one angle. You may have one area that the customer was enticed by that got you the meeting. But once you're in there, as long as you're showing love to what they want to talk about, you can ultimately start talking about some of the other components that you want to talk about as well, and uncover new opportunities. So, I would say, if I had to describe my sales funnel, I think it's very diverse. It is, there's multiple, because again, we all sell different metrics and things of that stature. So it's very diverse, because I try to have as many conversations as I can while I'm there, and then bring in resources, or maybe find different resources that are, if it's, because again, your client's going to maybe want to digest something that is a PDF file, or they may want to have another conversation with somebody else on your team or within your business, or maybe they want to talk to a referral or recommendation, get recommendations about your business. They may want to have those types of conversations. So there's a lot of different ways that can go from there. So I would say, if I had to describe my sales funnel, it's diverse, but it also is very detailed with next steps. And also, I do as much of that follow-up in the actual meeting that I'm in, so that the next time it speeds up the sales process.
So for your personal sales funnel, have you explored doing landing pages, lead magnets, anything that sort, to maybe entice people to check out your books, or do you rely on established channels like Amazon?
I've played with a lot of stuff, but I'm willing to admit what I don't know. It's funny, and I wrote my first book, 7-8 years ago, and I remember starting out with I had a publisher, and talked with a publicist that worked there, and I did some basic recommendations that they made. Over the years, I've played around too. I actually self-published a book as well, and so I got that vantage point, and I did a lot of research before I did that, and so I started out with a couple of social media platforms, and again, Matt, you know this better than most, that how much some of these platforms from social media have changed over the years, as far as what they favor, how to get clicks. So I've tried to really follow a lot of those trends, but I think the main thing that I've tried to instill in my in my book platform has been, writing good quality content, finding different ways to share it, and finding different ways to really engage folks. I mean, it isn't all about me. I'd rather have conversations around the topics that interest me and form relationships, and it's been great. I mean, I have 300 and some odd thousand followers from across the world on different platforms. So I have conversations every day with folks that are all over the place, that are passionate about sales and leadership. So there is no exact science to my process, and I will be the first to admit that there is probably a lot that I could do that would make it better. And I've tinkered with stuff in the past. I had a website, had some landing page stuff a long time ago, and I'm always open to suggestions and having those types of conversations. But it's not an exact science. But I've obviously the book's available at Barnes and Noble and on Amazon. So I've utilized existing websites that are out there. I did an audio book, and I've done a lot of video. So I've employed like YouTube and then obviously blogged with my WordPress blog, and then I post that to all of my different sites. So a lot of different stuff that I do. None of it's an exact science, and I'm always eager to learn more about how I can utilize that better.
So do you tend to focus on certain social media platforms more than others? Let's say LinkedIn as opposed to Facebook or Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, again, I've got to be careful talking about LinkedIn because we acquired it as a company, Microsoft. But so I do love using different platforms, and I say my thought process on like a Facebook, for instance, has changed. I've got a group page, and I've got pages for my writing and my book and whatnot. And obviously, I know that some of the things that they favor have changed dramatically over the last several years. So you got to think about, if I'm posting a video, for instance, I'm not posting a link that's pre-existing on another site. I'm finding a way to post that organically. So I think it changes your philosophy without question. But my philosophy with social media is the same as it is with everything else. It's I don't discriminate against any platform. I've got a page on just about everything I can find. And if there's ways that I can be posting to all of that at the same time and building a presence on each, I'm all for it.
Do you find that lead generation is different based on the country, like the geography or the industry?
I do. I think the most important thing when you're generating leads for a certain industry or in a certain industry is you want to look at what so if I'm generating a lead versus a competing company, I think it's important to look at what my competition is doing to get those leads. Are they making certain types of posts? Are they appealing to a certain audience? Are they doing a certain thing in that vertical or in that space or in that geography that makes them stand out? And then how can I kind of mimic that? How can I pick off the same types of clients but differentiate myself and make me the one that they want to look at? So I absolutely do think that it can vary by part of the world, vary by industry vertical, and I think you look at what is happening in that industry, what are the priorities in the industry, what is your business or your company or your offering in that space, and then how can you stand out and stand apart? Because and I think we talked about this in our last conversation. When you're marketing or targeting a specific client in an industry, if you really want to add value in that industry, get different searches of articles of what you're bringing to that industry, different ways that you or your competition is making a difference in that industry, because you want to know that stuff. And if you see something specific that's about an industry trend, there's nothing better than sending a quick email or sending a note via one of these social platforms to say, hey, I'd love your thoughts on this. Let's have a conversation. Or I saw that this is a trend in your industry, or in your geography. Like, hey, I saw that this is happening in such and such a city in our industry. I was very curious about your thoughts on it. And it can be a great conversation starter. And it's a great way also not to be calling them to say, hey, I want to sell you something.
So my last question would be on a more personal level. So to wrap up this call, what are you up to for the holidays?
What am I up to for the holidays? Laying as low as possible, if that is possible. Actually, you know what? Thanksgiving was really nice because I was able to unplug, and I think that's really important no matter what. I mean, we we spend a lot of time in this game running and just doing everything we can to to make a difference in our business. And we're in a busy time of year. I mean, you're in a time of year where you're kind of wrapping up, and you're kind of making sure that you're putting the finishing touches on some of this stuff, and it's added stress because you've got fewer sales days to work with in November and December. So I think it's very important to take some time to unplug. With this time of year too, I mean, it's going to be my youngest daughter's first Christmas, so that's huge. But I envision time with family and just unplugging and unwinding. What about you, Matt?
Some time with the family and hopefully some rest as well, which is well needed.
Yes.
And probably keep working quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of fun to unwind during that time because you can work at your leisure. So I feel like we're always, as salespeople and as sales leaders, I mean, we're always doing work of some kind, but you can dictate it a lot more when you've got some of that downtime. And, maybe you do a little reading or research on something that has been kind of nagging at you. But I think one of the biggest things that I do at this time of year too is really reflect and look back, what's working, what's not. Because at this point in the year, I mean, your years is pretty well formulated. I mean, you may still be chasing some deals, but during the holidays, it's a great time to reflect on the year and just say, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't, and these are the changes and the tweaks that I want to make to my process for next year. So, and there'll definitely be some of that for me personally, just looking at ways to continually move forward.
Carson, thank you.
My pleasure, Matt. I love these conversations. Can't wait to see what's next.
Let's keep going. All right. Talk to you soon.
Always. Yep, absolutely.
Ciao.